Your support keeps these stories alive. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell.
My name is Matthew Parker. I am 32 years old, and this is the story of how my cousin tried to steal my grandmother's jewelry by claiming it was hers until I uncovered the truth and exposed her lies in front of the entire family. To understand why this moment cut so deep, I need to go back a bit to the bond I had with my grandmother and why those pieces of jewelry were never just ornaments of gold and silver, but fragments of her life and, in many ways, fragments of mine. My grandmother, Evelyn Parker, was a formidable woman. She had grown up in an era when women had little freedom, but she had carved her own path with sheer grit and unshakable determination. She raised 3 children almost single-handedly after my grandfather passed away far too young, and she was the anchor of our family. I spent countless summers at her small house with the wide porch, where she told me stories about her youth, her struggles, and the dreams she had held on to even when life tried to crush them. She was the one who taught me the value of hard work, respect, and above all, honesty. Among her possessions, the jewelry stood out not because it was extravagant, but because of what it represented. A gold locket she had received from her mother before leaving home at 17. A sapphire ring that my grandfather had saved for 2 years to buy before proposing, and a pearl bracelet that she wore every Christmas without fail. Each piece had a story attached, and each story was etched in my memory. To her, these items were heirlooms, symbols of resilience, love, and family. And she had told me many times, quietly and without fanfare, "Matthew, when I am gone, I want you to have these. You're the one who understands what they mean." When she passed away, it was devastating. Even though she was 86 and her health had been declining for years, nothing truly prepares you for the loss of someone who was a pillar of your life. At the funeral, the entire family gathered, and emotions ran high. My cousin Rebecca, who was 2 years younger than me, was there too. Rebecca had always been dramatic, entitled, and manipulative. She was the kind of person who thrived on attention, and my grandmother, though patient, had often confided in me how difficult Rebecca could be. It wasn't long after the funeral that the storm began. We were gathered in my grandmother's living room, sorting through her belongings, when Rebecca's voice suddenly cut through the room. "These are mine. Grandma promised me her jewelry years ago." She was standing near the wooden chest where my grandmother kept her treasured pieces, her hands already hovering over the box like a predator about to snatch prey. I froze. "What are you talking about?" I asked sharply. She tossed her hair, her eyes narrowing. "Don't act like you don't know. Grandma always said she wanted me to have her jewelry. She told me personally." My mother looked uneasy, glancing at me, while my aunt tried to keep the peace by saying, "Let's not fight. We're all grieving." But I could feel my blood beginning to boil, because I knew the truth. I had sat with my grandmother countless times, listening to her stories about those pieces, listening to her say that she wanted me to keep them safe. "Rebecca," I said, my voice low but firm, "that's not true. Grandma told me directly she wanted me to have them." Her face twisted into a sneer. "Of course she told you that. You've always been her favorite, but you're not entitled to everything just because you spent more time here. I'm her granddaughter too, and I deserve what's mine." The room grew tense. My uncle coughed awkwardly. My sister tried to intervene, but Rebecca's words hung in the air like poison. I clenched my fists, biting back the urge to shout, because in that moment, it wasn't just about jewelry, it was about respect, about truth, about honoring my grandmother's wishes. I could feel the eyes of my family on me, waiting to see if I would back down. But backing down wasn't an option. I knew something Rebecca didn't. My grandmother had left a will, and in that will, written in her own hand and signed with absolute clarity, she had spelled out exactly who was to receive her cherished jewelry. And spoiler, it wasn't Rebecca. As Rebecca continued to argue, raising her voice and insisting that she was the rightful heir, I remained silent, letting her dig her own hole. Because deep inside, I was already planning the moment I would bring out the will, place it in front of everyone, and shatter her lies. That moment would come soon enough. But first, I had to let her show everyone who she truly was, selfish, greedy, and unworthy of what she tried to claim. And when the truth finally came out, I knew the explosion would be unforgettable. The days following my grandmother's funeral were some of the hardest I had lived through. Her absence was like a hollow space in every corner of that house. Her chair by the window sat empty, the scent of her lavender perfume lingered faintly in the air, and her voice, which used to fill the room with stories and advice, was now only an echo in my memory. But as much as I wanted to grieve quietly, I wasn't given the chance, because Rebecca made sure of that. From the moment she set her eyes on that chest of jewelry, she became relentless. She started calling family members one by one, trying to recruit allies to her side. My sister told me later that Rebecca had phoned her the next morning, insisting that Grandma told me in confidence that the jewelry was meant for her. She used the same line with my uncle, with my aunt, even with my mother. She painted me as the selfish one, claiming I was trying to hoard everything for myself. At first, I wanted to ignore her. I thought, let her talk. The truth will speak for itself when the will is read. But it wasn't that simple. I began to notice how her persistence started to plant seeds of doubt in some relatives. My aunt, who had always tried to keep the peace, pulled me aside and said, "Matthew, maybe it would be easier if you shared the pieces with her. You both loved your grandmother. Maybe this isn't worth a fight." Her words made my blood run hot. Share them? This wasn't about dividing spoils like we were children splitting candy. These were heirlooms my grandmother had specifically entrusted to me. Sharing them just to appease Rebecca's lies would be spitting on my grandmother's wishes. Rebecca's behavior only escalated. She showed up at the house almost daily, strutting in with that air of entitlement, acting like she was already the new owner of everything. I walked into the living room one afternoon to find her trying on the pearl bracelet, holding her wrist up to the light with a smug smile. My fist clenched instantly. "What do you think you're doing?" I snapped. She looked at me with mock innocence. "Relax, Matthew. I'm just admiring what's mine." "It's not yours," I said coldly. "Take it off." Her smile twisted into a smirk. "Why don't you make me?" That single sentence nearly pushed me over the edge. I took a step forward, my voice low and sharp. "Rebecca, don't test me. Those pieces belong to Grandma, and she made it very clear who she wanted them to go to. You can parade around here and spread lies all you want, but when the will is opened, everyone will see the truth." For the first time, I saw her expression falter just for a flicker of a second. But then she scoffed. "You think a piece of paper is going to change anything? People believe me because I'm telling the truth. You've always been Grandma's golden boy, and now you're just trying to keep everything for yourself." I felt my chest tighten, anger rising like a tide. "No, Rebecca, people are starting to believe you because you never shut your mouth. You scream the loudest, but that doesn't make you right. When that will is read, you're going to be exposed in front of everyone, and I promise you, it will be the last time you ever try to use Grandma's memory to feed your greed." She crossed her arms, raising her chin defiantly. "We'll see." After she left, my mother came into the room, her face worried. "Matthew," she said gently, "is there really a will?" I nodded firmly. "Yes, Mom. Grandma gave me a copy months ago. She knew this family. She knew there would be fighting. She told me, 'Keep this safe, Matthew. When the time comes, you'll need it.'" My mother's eyes softened, but there was sadness in them. She was right. She always knew Rebecca would stir up trouble. That night, I sat on my bed holding the envelope that contained the will. My grandmother's handwriting was scrawled neatly across the front. "For Matthew, when the time is right." I traced the letters with my finger, feeling both the weight and the comfort of her foresight. She had trusted me to guard not only her jewelry, but also her last wishes. I wasn't going to let her down. The tension in the family grew with each passing day. Phone calls turned into arguments. Visits turned into confrontations. Some relatives begged me to settle things quietly, while others told me to stand my ground. And through it all, Rebecca strutted around like a peacock, convinced that her lies would carry the day. But I was ready. The family was scheduled to gather the following Sunday at my grandmother's house to finally sort through her possessions and decide what went where. Rebecca had already announced, loud and proud, that she would be walking out with the jewelry. What she didn't know was that I would be walking in with the will. And when I laid that document on the table in front of everyone, there would be no more pretending, no more lies, no more manipulations. The truth would stand, and Rebecca's empire of deceit would crumble in front of the very people she had tried to fool. I could already picture the look on her face when the words of the will were read aloud, and that image gave me the strength to endure the days of tension leading up to it. Sunday came faster than I expected. The days leading up to it had been tense, every phone call filled with speculation and every conversation dripping with unspoken hostility. It felt less like a family gathering and more like the build-up to a trial where everyone had already picked sides. That morning, as I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my shirt, I slipped the envelope with the will into my inside pocket. I touched it gently, reminding myself that my grandmother's voice was sealed in there, her wishes written in ink, waiting to cut through the lies. When I pulled into her driveway, the house looked strangely smaller than I remembered, but the moment I stepped inside, the air was heavy. My uncle and aunt sat stiffly on the couch, my mother wringing her hands in the kitchen, my sister seated quietly by the window. And then there was Rebecca, standing in the middle of the living room like it was a stage and she was the star. She wore a smug smile and had already draped the pearl bracelet around her wrist, flashing it like a trophy. "Well, everyone," she said in a syrupy voice the second I walked in, "I guess we can finally make this official. Grandma wanted me to have her jewelry, and I think it's time we respected her wishes." I set my bag down slowly, taking in the room. "Her wishes?" I repeated, my voice calm but edged with steel. Funny, because I remember her wishes very clearly, and they weren't what you're claiming. Rebecca rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please, Matthew. You think you're the only one Grandma ever spoke to?" She told me personally. She said, "Rebecca, you'll be the one to carry these pieces forward." She trusted me. "Trusted you?" I snapped, unable to hold it back any longer. "You barely spent time with her. You were too busy chasing attention, posting selfies, and complaining about how life was unfair. Don't stand here and pretend you understood her, let alone that she trusted you with something that mattered this much." Her smile faltered, but quickly returned, sharp and venomous. "Jealousy doesn't look good on you, cousin. You've always been her favorite, and you think that means you get everything. Well, not this time." The room went quiet. My aunt shifted uncomfortably. My uncle cleared his throat. For a moment, it looked like Rebecca's boldness might sway them again. That was her trick: say a lie loud enough, repeat it often enough, and people start to question the truth. But I wasn't about to let her win. I stepped forward, pulling the envelope slowly from my pocket. "You're right about one thing, Rebecca. Grandma did make her wishes clear, but she didn't whisper them in private so you could twist her words. She wrote them down. In her will, signed, dated, and witnessed." The color drained from her face, though she tried to keep her composure. "You're bluffing." I held the envelope up for everyone to see. "Am I?" My mother gasped softly, her hands flying to her mouth. My uncle leaned forward, eyes widening. My sister looked at me with a mixture of relief and pride, and Rebecca, her mask finally began to crack. "Go ahead then," she spat. "Read it. Let's see what it says." With deliberate calm, I tore open the envelope and unfolded the papers. My grandmother's handwriting was there, neat and steady despite her age, each word carefully chosen. I cleared my throat and began to read aloud. "To my beloved grandson Matthew, I leave my jewelry box and all its contents, including the gold locket, the sapphire ring, and the pearl bracelet. These pieces represent the history of our family and the love that has carried us through hardship. I trust Matthew to keep them safe and to honor the stories they hold." The silence that followed was deafening. Every eye in the room shifted to Rebecca, who stood frozen, her mouth slightly open, the bracelet still glittering mockingly on her wrist. I folded the paper slowly, letting the weight of the words sink in. There it is, Grandma's voice, clear as day. "These weren't for you, Rebecca. They were never for you." She shook her head violently, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. "No, she told me. She must have changed her mind later. That paper doesn't mean anything. She wanted me to have them." "Enough," my uncle said firmly, his tone carrying authority. "The will is clear. Evelyn left those pieces to Matthew. This argument ends here." Rebecca's face twisted with rage, her eyes darting wildly around the room as if searching for someone to rescue her. "You're all against me. You've always been against me." She yanked the bracelet off her wrist and threw it onto the coffee table with a loud clatter. "Fine, take it, but don't think this is over." She stormed out of the room, the slam of the door echoing through the house. The silence she left behind was heavy, but different this time. It was filled with relief, with closure. My mother wiped tears from her eyes, whispering, "She planned for this. She knew." I picked up the bracelet gently, running my thumb across the smooth pearls. My chest tightened with emotion. My grandmother had known exactly what kind of storm Rebecca would bring, and she had given me the tools to weather it. In that moment, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt honored. Honored that she had trusted me. Honored that I had been able to defend her wishes. Honored that even in death, she was still teaching me how to stand firm against lies. But deep down, I also knew this wasn't truly over. Rebecca wasn't the kind of person to walk away quietly. She would come back, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but she would return with more schemes, more bitterness, more poison. And when she did, I would be ready. I thought the storm had passed when Rebecca slammed that door and sped out of my grandmother's driveway, but I should have known better. People like her don't disappear quietly. They brood, they scheme, and then they come back swinging harder, desperate to claw back the power they feel slipping through their fingers. And that was exactly what happened. The very next morning, I woke up to a flurry of messages on my phone. Cousins, distant relatives, even old family friends I hadn't spoken to in years had suddenly decided to text me. At first, I was confused. Then I realized Rebecca had taken her fight to social media. She had posted a long, venomous rant about how I had stolen my grandmother's jewelry, how the so-called will was fake, and how I had manipulated the entire family into siding with me. She painted herself as the victim, a poor granddaughter robbed of her rightful inheritance by the favorite grandson who always got everything. My blood boiled as I scrolled through her lies, but what made it worse were the comments. Some people actually believed her. "That's so unfair, Rebecca. I'm so sorry. Families can be so cruel. Stay strong, girl. You deserve better." It was like watching someone set fire to the truth and then dance in the flames. I wanted to respond, to call her out, to post the will online for the world to see, but my sister stopped me. "Don't give her more fuel," she said firmly. "Let her rant. People who know the truth don't need convincing, and the ones who side with her won't listen anyway. What matters is that the family knows what Grandma wanted. She was right, but it didn't make it any easier." For the next few days, Rebecca avoided me directly, but waged a quiet war behind the scenes. She called my uncle late at night, crying about how she had been cheated. She showed up unannounced at my aunt's house, begging for anyone to back her up. She even tried to convince my mother to pressure me into sharing the jewelry with her, claiming it was the only way to keep the family from falling apart. When I confronted my mom about it, she looked torn. "Matthew," she said softly, "I know what your grandmother wanted, and I know you're right. But is holding on to all of this worth tearing the family apart? Maybe giving Rebecca just one piece would calm her down." I shook my head firmly. "No, Mom, that's exactly what she wants. She doesn't care about Grandma's memory. She only cares about winning, about having something she can wave around to say, 'Look, I got my way.' If I give in even a little, it dishonors Grandma's trust. She gave these to me for a reason. She knew Rebecca would act like this. And I won't betray her just to make Rebecca stop screaming." It was hard to watch my mom's face fall, but I knew I was right. This wasn't just about jewelry anymore. It was about truth versus lies, respect versus entitlement, dignity versus manipulation. A week later, Rebecca made her boldest move yet. She showed up at my grandmother's house during another family gathering, uninvited and unapologetic. She barged through the door carrying a stack of papers. "Since you're all so obsessed with paperwork," she announced, "I brought my own." She slammed the papers onto the coffee table. They were typed documents, clearly not official, with her name written in bold letters. "This is proof that Grandma wanted me to have the jewelry. She told me to write this down, and she signed it." I picked up the papers, scanning them carefully. The signature at the bottom was shaky, poorly forged, nothing like my grandmother's neat handwriting. My chest burned with anger. "This is fake," I said coldly. "Anyone with eyes can see that. And even if it weren't, it's not notarized, it's not witnessed, it's not legal. Do you really think you can waltz in here with a piece of paper you typed up and convince us all that it overrules her actual will?" Rebecca's face flushed red. "It's not fake. She signed it, I swear." My uncle stepped forward, his patience finally gone. "Rebecca, enough. This is pathetic. You're embarrassing yourself and insulting Evelyn's memory." But she didn't stop. She turned on me, her voice shrill and venomous. "You think you're so perfect, Matthew. Grandma's golden boy. You think you deserve everything just because you sat by her side at the end. Well, guess what? I was her granddaughter too. And I'm not going to let you erase me." I stared at her, my voice steady even as my heart pounded. "No one erased you, Rebecca. You erased yourself the moment you tried to twist her memory into a weapon for your own greed. You didn't love her, you loved what she could give you. And now you're proving to everyone exactly why she didn't trust you with these pieces." The room went silent. Rebecca's chest heaved, her eyes wild. For a moment, I thought she might lunge at me, but instead she grabbed her fake papers, tore them in half, and stormed out again, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. This time, nobody followed her. Nobody tried to defend her. The last threads of sympathy had snapped, and she stood exposed, her lies laid bare for everyone to see. That night, as I placed the jewelry back into my grandmother's chest, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and pride. Exhaustion because the battle had drained me. Pride because I had protected her legacy. Rebecca might come back again, but the family had seen the truth with their own eyes now. There was no going back. And deep in my heart, I knew my grandmother was smiling down at me, proud that I had stood my ground. I thought Rebecca's second dramatic exit would be the end of it. The family had seen her lies, they had heard my grandmother's will read out loud, and they had watched her attempt to forge her own document blow up in her face. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But with Rebecca, peace never lasted long. She had always been the kind of person who needed the last word, who would rather set fire to everything around her than accept defeat. And sure enough, she came back one last time. It was 2 weeks later at a family dinner meant to honor my grandmother's memory. My mother had cooked her favorite dishes, my uncle had brought wine, and for a moment, it felt like maybe we were finally healing. We sat around the dining table sharing stories about Grandma, how she used to scold us if we didn't wash our hands before dinner, how she had the sharpest wit of anyone in the room, how she would always hum softly while stirring her tea. The mood was warm, nostalgic, almost comforting. Then the front door opened and Rebecca walked in. The entire table went silent. She didn't knock, didn't ask if she could join. She just waltzed in wearing a bold red dress, her chin high, her eyes daring anyone to challenge her. In her hands was a small velvet pouch. She dropped it on the table with a dramatic flair, and the contents spilled out cheap costume jewelry, gaudy and shiny, nothing like the delicate pieces my grandmother had owned. "There," she declared, her voice cutting through the silence. "I don't want your stupid pearls or rings anymore. I brought my own. But I want everyone here to remember that I was Grandma's granddaughter too. She loved me just as much as she loved any of you. And if you all want to paint me as the villain, fine. But don't you dare erase me from her story." For a moment, nobody spoke. My aunt shifted uncomfortably. My mother lowered her eyes. The whole room seemed frozen between pity and anger. Finally, I leaned forward, my voice calm but steady. "Rebecca, no one erased you. Grandma's love wasn't a contest. But what you did, lying, manipulating, trying to forge documents, trying to steal what wasn't yours, that erased your own credibility, you didn't honor her memory. You tried to twist it for your gain. And that's why the family doesn't trust you right now." Her face flushed, and I could see her throat tightening like she was holding back either tears or screams. She pointed a finger at me, her voice trembling with rage. "You think you're so righteous, Matthew, but you're not perfect. You just happen to be the one she trusted most. That doesn't make you better than me." I met her gaze without flinching. "You're right, Rebecca. I'm not perfect, but I was there. I sat with her when she was sick. I listened to her stories when no one else wanted to. I didn't do it for an inheritance. I did it because I loved her. And that's why she trusted me. You can't fake that with flashy speeches or fake papers. She saw who we were when no one was watching." The room was silent again, except this time it was heavy with truth. Even my uncle, who had always tried to keep the peace, nodded slowly. "Matthew's right. Evelyn knew us all. She knew who deserved what. That's why she put it in writing." Rebecca's shoulders slumped. For the first time, she looked small, deflated. She gathered her cheap jewelry back into the pouch, muttered something under her breath, and walked out quietly. No slammed door this time, just silence. When she was gone, my mother sighed deeply, as though a weight had finally lifted. "She won't give up entirely," she whispered, "but maybe now she understands she can't win." I didn't answer. Instead, I looked down at the pearl bracelet, now resting in front of me. My grandmother's bracelet. I ran my fingers along its smooth surface, memories flooding back the way it used to glimmer on her wrist when she held my hand. The way she'd tell me, "One day, Matthew, you'll know why I'm giving this to you." And now I did. It wasn't about jewelry, it wasn't about ownership, it was about trust, about responsibility, about carrying her legacy forward and protecting it from being twisted by greed. That night, as I placed the jewelry back into the chest, I whispered a quiet promise to my grandmother. "Don't worry, Grandma. I kept my word. No one will take this from me, and no one will take your memory and turn it into something ugly. I'll honor you. Always. When I closed the chest and turned the key, I felt something settle inside me. A peace I hadn't felt since the day she passed. Rebecca had tried to steal not just jewelry, but dignity. And in the end, she lost everything. Her credibility, her standing in the family, her chance to rewrite the story. Me? I didn't just keep the jewelry. I kept the truth alive. And I knew, wherever she was, Grandma Evelyn was proud of me.